understand these words. Help us to bring comfort unto others as well, Father. Please bless all the participants who are participating today. Give us wisdom and knowledge. Let your spirit abide with each one of us. I ask all these few mercies in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I hope that you have had a good morning so far. I've been in Zoom meetings. It's already sorry. It seems as though technology is giving trouble everywhere at this moment. It's great to have you people again, and we're going to focus today on a very exciting topic, and that is the role that exercise play in resilience. Let's focus this morning before we continue on how you're coping, and I'd like to link it in with some of your responses on how you are going so far in terms of your emotional coping skills. Friends, I would like to suggest to you that you're experiencing numbness, disbelief, anxiety, and fear, that this program that we're going to do today is specifically designed for you. So I want you to focus very carefully on the principles that I'm going to teach during this program. Our appetite, our energy levels, and our activity levels will be changed as we are struggling to maintain our resilience, difficulty to concentrate, difficulty sleeping. I noticed that some of you had indicated nightmares and upsetting images that you have during your sleep. And I would like to suggest to you that at this stage, the reason why you're battling with those things is because of where your focus lies. Remember that what I have previously shared with you, that highly resilient people actually decides what they can change and what they cannot change. And when they keep on focusing on those areas which they cannot change, we find that we are overcome with anxiousness and intrusive thoughts, and especially images that are disturbing. And often our brain concocts images far worse than what we might ever experience in our life. Some of us have experienced reactions such as headaches, body pains, stomach problems, skin rashes, and so forth. Listen up to what this presentation is going to share, because it's going to give you a key on how to deal with stress and anxiety. Others have experienced worsening chronic health problems, anger or short-temperedness, and I want to suggest to you once again that alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs are never the solution. It is in actual fact a mask. And the years that I worked in the anti-drug field had shown me that the people that resort to these kind of coping mechanisms, the day that they want to get off those substances, they not only have to deal with the addiction part, but they have to deal with exactly the same issues that started them off in the first place. In other words, it had never resolved the real issue. We've looked so far at having a moral compass, facing our fears, in other words, very quickly deciding what we can and what we cannot change. But we also focused on optimism, making sure that out of our greatest pain, we actually can grow stronger. And this is what this program is geared to do. And that is not just being able to bounce back from where you have been, but rather that you will be able to be a stronger person, be able to give back into your community far more because of this pandemic. Then we look at practical spirituality. And I reminded you a few times already that God never wastes our pain, that building a relationship with God, and I was so encouraged to see so many of you accepting God as your ultimate role model, and Jesus Christ, and therefore it had encouraged you to be able to stay focused. We also reminded you about getting social support. Human relationships is vital during a pandemic period because it helps us to release hormones that is actually called bonding hormones that helps to reduce the stress levels. And then last week we focused on physical fitness and keeping our brains resilient. Now, resilience isn't all in the mind. The question is, where else can we find it? And friends, it is in actual strength that we can find it. Characteristic of most resilient people is that most resilient people had good exercise habits that kept their bodies as well as their minds strong. I'm just going to stop here just for a second and just ask a question. Ramona and Pabruk, am I doubling up on this one today? I'm not hearing a response, so I'm going to... Am I doubling up on this one now?
No.
Not.
This
okay.
one is okay.
I speak so often about these things that for a split second I was afraid that I had already shared this with you people. So my apology for that. So a characteristic of most resilient people is that most resilient people actually recognize that exercise habits that keeps our body strong, but also our mind strong. Southwick and Journey says that many of the resilient individuals we interviewed have a regular habit of exercise and belief that staying fit has helped them both during their traumatic ordeal and during their recovery. In fact, some of them credit physical exercise with having saved their life. Now, friends, here's a question that I would like to ask you. Why is it more critical for people who is emotional, more fragile, to focus on an exercise program? Why is it more important for them? Here's the answer. The stress of exercise helps us to adapt to the stress that we will feel when life challenges us. Research indicates that when we do our exercise program, that we actually go through exactly the same physiological changes as when we do an exercise program. In other words, our heart rate goes up, we start to sweat, we do heavy breathing. It's very similar to when we go through a major anxious moment. Over time, the anxiety-sensitive individual who continues to exercise vigorously can learn that these symptoms of arousal are typical, not dangerous. And therefore that the fear that these symptoms trigger gradually decreases in intensity. So when I go on an exercise program and I experience the sweatiness and I experience the heightened heart rate and quick breathing, which is very typical of an anxious panic attack. During panic attack, individuals suffering with anxiety neurosis often think that they are going to die. In exercise, we see it as normal, realizing that we don't die. and eventually those two become normalized and people are able to work through that. A very typical example out of the counseling room I'd like to share with you. I've shared previously that I have done some research in working with Australia's Indigenous people. The program that I run in terms of depression, anxiety had never previously been taken to Indigenous people. Aboriginal people in Australia has more than double the depression rates as the rest of the Australian population. Their anxiety levels are 4 times higher than the rest of Australians. Suicide rates are more than double that of the rest of the population. So I selected a group of people, invited them to come on board. Our selection criteria was that they needed to have been in treatment with a medical model with no change. So in other words, they had expressed treatment resistance in terms of anxiety, in terms of depression. 7/8 of the group had experienced major trauma in their life. Some of the people had attempted a week before to commit suicide. Others have just come out of prison. In other words, we were selecting the most difficult group to work with them over a 10-day period. Now, friends, 10 days are biblical. You find it in the book of Daniel. The first longitudinal study that was ever done is recorded in the book of Daniel chapter 1, where Daniel, through diet and lifestyle, had proven that there was a far better outcome in the midst of a major traumatic event. So in 10 days, I'll be able to demonstrate a significant change in the lives of these people. That was my theory. So we took them in to this program, 35 participants to start off with. We tested them the first day and we tested them again 9 days later. The day that we tested them for the first time, their depression levels were extreme severe. Their anxiety levels were extreme severe. Part of the requirement to get this program free of charge was that they had to comply with everything that we asked them to do. So just after they've done their test, we informed them that tomorrow morning early, we're going to wake you up just before sunrise. And all of us as a group is going to go for a walk. We're going to go for a walk along the beach. It was very interesting to observe the reaction. Some of those people immediately experienced a panic attack. So we dealt with it. Very early the following morning, we woke them all up. More panic attacks. We went for a slow walk initially to normalize things for them. But each day we walked a little bit further and a little bit faster. Some of those people initially looked more like ducks waddling along than really doing exercise. But by the 5th day, they started to report changes that they noticed in their mood and in the way that they perceive life. They started to look forward to the next morning's exercise program because it did not stay just with walking. We started doing stretching exercises and we started to walk faster on the beach, breathing in that fresh air. Very interesting research that a professor of psychiatry, Dr. John J. Rutty, wrote the book Spark, The Revolutionary New Science of Exercise and the Brain. You can purchase this book. Its subtitle says, supercharge your mental circuits to beat stress, sharpen your thinking, lift your mood, boost your memory, and much more. Professor Ratti trains psychiatrists. And he asks in his book this question: from a medical perspective, which is easier to treat, depression or anxiety? Friends, the truth is that it is far easier to treat depression than anxiety, because with anxiety, there's a far higher incidence or stronger medication that needs to be taken, as well as a much longer period of time that people need to stay on that medication than with depression. Professor John Ratti actually says to psychiatrists that long before you even consider to prescribe any medication, the first prescription that you need to give your patients should always be, who wants to guess? Exercise. Yes, plain exercise. And he comes and he tells the rationale. He says, from that first moment that you go onto an exercise program, it is anxiety that will immediately start to be broken down. From that first day that you do your exercise, you will come back with chemical and hormonal changes in your body, changing, breaking down the damage that stress had done internally for you. He says, for depression, you will feel no change for the first 10 days. Now, after 10 days, normally, we have given up. He says, go beyond that 10th day. What you will find is that you will start to feel better about yourself and about the world around you. So the number one prescription in order to beat anxiety and depression is exercise. Now, friends, Ramona last week challenged you to start on a program to journaling. I want to ask you not just to journal, but I also want to ask you today to commit to a vigorous exercise program starting from today. Now, if you are over 35 and you're not used to doing exercise, physical strenuous exercise, I don't want you to just jump in there and start to do strenuous exercise. What I would like you to do is to start to walk. And each day, walk a little bit faster and walk a little bit further. Each day, take a few more steps further. And here's a gauge, how you can gauge how much you need to push yourself. If you cannot talk while you're doing your exercise, you are too out of breath, you are pushing yourself too much. But if you can still sing while you exercise, you are not doing it strong enough. So use that talk, sing, gauge to push yourself a little bit further each day. Try to exercise up to 6 days per week. And check to see how your mood is going to change. So let me give you today 4 ways that exercise can increase your resilience. Number 1, exercise boosts your immune system. Now, friends, what is it that impairs our immune system? Psychological stress actually breaks down your immune system. It actually strips your immune system from its protective layer and therefore allow that diseases impact you. Last week, I spoke to you about the importance of sunlight and how that the mere exposure to sunlight, 30 to 40 minutes of sunlight exposure each day, can in actual fact boost your immune system. Here is another very practical thing that you can do to boost your immune system, and that is through physical exercise. You see, chronic psychological stress impairs our immune function and makes you more vulnerable to disease. Consistent, regular exercise will build up your immune system. When the psychological stress comes, your body will be ready for it, strong enough to maintain your immune system to be able to fight off those diseases. Number two, it blunts the hormonal stress responses. Just like physical stress, psychological stress starts off a whole cascade of hormones. The most prominent one of that is cortisol. Another one that is also well known is noradrenaline. Just imagine if you would get a major fright right now, you will in actual fact be experiencing a surge to be able to react. That is because of the noradrenaline that is released into your system. Research tells us that regular exercise reduces the baseline levels of stress hormones and blunts the hormonal response to sudden psychological stress. It means that a mental or emotional stressor will feel less stressful and do less damage to your body as well as to your brain when you undergo a major stressful event in your life. So friends, the first one we said was to exercise, boost your immune system. The second one blunts the hormonal stress responses. The third one is that it changes your gene expression. As we talk about cortisol in number two, which is the stress hormone, a mother that is pregnant with a child and is exposed to major levels of stress will actually find that in the bloodstream of an unborn child, the cortisol levels will be equal as in the mother's bloodstream. This means that the child, especially if that major stress period is prolonged over most of that pregnancy, what that mother will experience is that her child later in life will struggle to be able to deal with stress. The reason, my friends, for that is because of the epigenetical, in other words, the gene expression that has been switched off in order to deal with stress. I'd already previously mentioned to you that my wife, while pregnant with our children, had been diagnosed with the severest form of depression and anxiety that the professor of psychiatry had seen. I've also, by the way, hopefully shared with you that she had not used any medication for either one of those two for the past 28 years. She doesn't need it anymore, in spite of what the professor had said. Some of the principles that I'm sharing with you are principles that I helped her with to overcome her anxiety and her stress. But our son, who is an engineer today, recognizes that he has a deficiency in terms of dealing with stress. The way that he manages that is by way of exercise. So he's just taken a break of annual leave for a week, and this entire week he has been on a mountain bike, cycling away with his family and changing that gene expression, switching it on again so that he can be more resilient. In general, exercise has a bunch of epigenetical benefits. Among them are changes in gene expression that increase mental stress resilience. That means that if you are genetically prone to stress, a consistent exercise program can actually help reduce that problem in your life. As I was doing my master's degree and doing my specialization in trauma therapy and trauma intervention, I recognized that I actually grew up in my country of origin in a trauma state. In other words, when trauma later happened again, when I was at war, as well as there in Cabramatta in the drug field, I realized that that was a re-traumatization. In order for me to be able to cope in the midst of that experiences, exercise played a major role. So friends, this is not just something that I'm telling you what you should do, but I have experienced these things personally as well. The final point that I'd like to bring to you is that it is an anti-inflammatory exercise, provides anti-inflammatory. A single workout is pro-inflammatory. In other words, it inflames. A workout is a stressor, and stresses causes inflammation. Both exercise and public speaking, as I am here speaking to a large group of people, both of that actually creates pro-inflammatory markers on my nervous system. Both exercise, whenever you go for a hard run and you do something nerve-wracking, your body has to deal with the same inflammatory stress. Research tells us that regular workouts with enough breaks to recover have been shown to reduce inflammation. You recover from the stress and you bounce back stronger than what you were before. And therefore, my dear friend, if you would look at my year planner, if I would bring it up on the screen, and I don't have it here now, you will see multiple programs, and sometimes even at head office level, they say, you're crazy to book yourself in for so many appointments. What you will notice on my year calendar is that I have red patches right through my year calendar. Each one of those red patches, a block or two, are in actual fact breaks that I planned in between my programs so that I can stay resilient. Every time that I stand up in front of an audience, it places stress in my life. In other words, it creates inflammation. But through exercise and creating those breaks, I'm able to maintain my resiliency. Research suggests that reducing inflammation might help reduce stress as well as anxiety. By reducing inflammation, regular exercise helps manage the stress responses in our lives. I hope that today's presentation was helpful for you. And those of you that are battling with anxiety, that you will commit today to an exercise program. You decide what kind of exercise, whether it's going to be a fast, brisk walking, whether you're fit enough to start a running program, whether you are going to play a ball game with others in your community, whether you are going to start doing vigorous gardening, which is a great way to make your own veggie patch and start to feed your family out of your own veggie patch, are all great sources of exercise. But let me give you just our final slide an exercise that you can start today. We call it intermittent training. In other words, it is a training program where you actually build breaks in between your exercise training. I want to suggest to you that you start at your fitness level. So if you haven't exercised for quite some time, don't just jump in and do an hour each day. That is the end goal, where you work up to the point where you can spend 60 minutes, an hour each day in exercise. You might start off, like with our indigenous people, with just a few minutes. We eventually, with our indigenous people, in 1 week, worked up to 20 minutes to a half an hour exercise with people that started off having panic attacks by just thinking about having to do an exercise. Begin with 5 to 10 minutes gentle stretching to get those muscles of yours that are cold when you get up in the morning, get them all stretched out. Then warm up your circulatory system with 5 minutes of slow, comfortable walking at a continuous pace. Your next step, at a vigorous pace, do the exercise of your choice. If it is going to be running or fast walking, walk very fast for 60 seconds. That is 1 minute. And then you take a rest. But don't stop completely. Slow down to a gentle, easy pace until your heart rate slows down. And here, gauge your time. Don't go more than 30 seconds. So half a minute, 1 minute fast walk, followed by 30 seconds, half a minute of slow walking. Then you'd start again your fast, brisk walking for another 60 seconds. Slow down with a 30 seconds, and you try to maintain that intermittent training for as long as what you can. So friends, the ideal is where you eventually can do this intermittent training with 5 minutes of brisk exercise, followed by 30 seconds of rest, more slower pace exercise. And then in closing, once you've finished, cool down 5 to 10 minutes, gentle stretching and gentle walking. This is the program that Olympic athletes use to prepare them for the Olympics. And friends, I would like to suggest to you that it is an exercise program that you and I can also do to maintain our resilience, to stay fit, and to stay sane from all the anxiety that is impacting the lives of people around us. I hope that today's presentation gave you some very practical ideas of how you can stay resilient. Let us close, though, with a closing prayer. Gracious Father, I thank you for the opportunity week by week to meet with the Asia region of ADRA workers. I want to pray for each one of them. I pray not just for them, I also pray for their families, for the communities, their countries that they represent. Lord, in the midst of a major crisis, my prayer is that our focus will be turned away from the crisis and focused upon you that still holds our lives and our future in your hand. Recognizing, knowing that you have multiple ways out of protecting us, guiding us, and again, bring a resolve out of our greatest crisis. I pray that as we focus today on physical exercise, that each one, as they commit to this program, will experience the benefit. They'll be able to report back next week how that they have seen the change happen. And may it not just stay with them, may they become change agents to the people around them. bringing resilience to broken lives that have given up hope. Thank you that we serve a God that has eternity waiting for us. May we live our life with that mindset, is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor David, for this wonderful message, how exercise can make a difference in our life. Thank you all for joining. And you all are requested to complete the survey, which you'll receive probably tomorrow. See you all next week. Stay safe. Thank you.
God bless everyone.